Welcome to Beyond the Desk Admin Advocates, where we explore what it truly means to be an administrative professional in today's world. I'm Melissa Mahoney, CEO of the International Association of Administrative Professionals.
And I'm Rachel Suman, CXO of IAAP. We're not just leaders in this field. We're advocates, champions, and former admins ourselves.
That's right, Rachel. This podcast isn't your typical industry talk. We're here to bring you real conversations, real stories, and real solutions.
From AI to self-awareness journeys, we're here to discuss the deep issues that admins face every day, drawing from our own experiences and those of our community.
So whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out on your administrative journey, join us as we explore the highs, the lows, and everything in between.
Get ready for authentic insights, candid conversations, and a whole lot of inspiration. This is Beyond the Desk Admin Advocates. Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of Beyond the Desk. We are so excited to see you again. Thank you for all of the great feedback, by the way. We have so enjoyed hearing from so many of you. Mel, I know you've gotten some conversations, like I've gotten some emails, we've gotten some joint ones, and it's so great to hear how many of you are loving this podcast and sharing your thoughts with us.
Absolutely, yes. We've had great feedback. We love hearing from you, so please keep sending the emails, the messages. It's great to hear from our listeners, and hopefully we keep adding new listeners. We have a very exciting and hot topic.
It's the one that everybody's been waiting for.
What is up with AI, Rachel?
Most of us know, but AI is artificial intelligence. AI has been around for years and years, right? But it felt like overnight it became like the thing. And it's brought up a whole bunch of conversations, especially in our community and the administrative profession, around, is it coming for your job? Is AI coming to steal your job? Is this going to replace you as an administrative professional? I think when you and I do presentations together, like that is the question that we get overwhelmingly most of all. And I think it's a really important topic for us to discuss, because I think that sense of fear and that initial kind of visceral reaction is really normal and really valid. And I'm so excited that we're getting to talk about this today, because I think it really hits a lot of people in our community in a way that hopefully we can help you look at those feelings a little differently by the end of this.
Yes, for sure. I think that's a great place to start, really, is to look at the response. The question, let's examine the question, is AI coming after the administrative profession? And I know there are a lot of professions, there are a lot of people in organizations who are asking that question, or asking what part of my job is going to be impacted by. I also believe the administrative profession is uniquely impacted because a lot of our role and responsibility could potentially be or is already being impacted by AI. So definitely would affirm and validate what Rachel is saying. It is a valid feeling and response. It's a very natural question to be asking, and it is like the first step to accessing being an agent of change, which is what I think we really wanted to say. This is not the space where we're going to tell you about all of the amazing things that it will do for you, with you. We have training, that we have facilitators who train on AI, and they do a phenomenal job of it. It will continue to be a part of our programming because it is a very relevant area for admins to be consuming and learning. But we really want to talk about the impact on the profession, that question. We want to help you unpack how you feel about AI and talk about some of the leadership competencies that show up in that space for us. And the concept of being an agent of change and being really open and curious about AI is where Rachel and I really started the conversation about what we want to talk about today. So I think let's start there. Let's talk about what that looks like. What are ways that people can access that change agent mindset, that paradigm? I mentioned it, but openness and curiosity is really a big key to unlocking that change agent paradigm.
Yeah.
And that might look like doing some research It can be really as simple as, instead of looking for answers elsewhere, thinking about how you might be able to source some answers for yourself. Do you have an internal network? Do you have an internal IT department? Do you know what your company and organization's policy is or stance is on AI? What do you have access to in terms of AI? Have you explored any AI platform?
I was thinking about this, and you and I talked about this. This feels like a new conversation. And it is in some ways, but it's also not. Like, I think about when the computer first entered. I'm old enough that the computer has always been a part of work. And I am old enough that I remember when typewriters were a thing. And that transition, I think that mindset is really what Mel was talking about around the change agent, because that's where it really gets into a dangerous space of taking your job, is when the mindset is, this is never going to work. This is not a thing. I'm not going to learn this. No, we probably knew, some of you in our community may have known, like, people back in the day when computers actually were coming in and they were like, this is never going to work. I'm not going to learn them. And they didn't have a job. And it's not because it was coming for their job. It's the mindset was, I am not going to be a change agent. I am not going to lean into this and learn it and be open and grow. So you said it. And I want to affirm even more, like, this is why we're talking about leadership in connection with AI, because it really is. I don't think either of us are going to be like, yes, it's coming for your job. No, it's not. Neither of us believe it is. I believe it's going to impact the work in ways that are amazing and brilliant and all of the things, and we can talk about that. But I think the important thing is to really lean into those leadership competencies of openness and curiosity, and ensuring that we have a correct mindset around this new inclusion and what we do and are responsible and open and all of those things, so that we're not the typewriter group who is left behind, quite honestly.
Right. Yeah. And I think examining your approach to AI, it will allow you to unlock access to those things. But I also want to be clear, not only are we not saying it will or will not come for your job, because we don't actually know the answer to that question. We really don't know how far this technology is going to go. We know it is growing exponentially by the minute, by the second, by the however you can measure time. It is exponentially gaining more knowledge, growing in its influence, growing in its impact. So we don't have the answer. I don't know if some jobs will be obsolete. What we believe to be true is that the best way for you to approach these changes is to be open and curious about them, so that you can embrace the things that are going to have impact, that you're prepared for that change if and when it does occur in your workplace. That can make a huge difference. But the other thing that we aren't here to say is that it's right or wrong. I cannot tell you how many people I've seen get into an argument about, and this is social media, that's what it's for, right?
Unfortunately.
Watching these people argue about whether or not this type of technology, if artificial intelligence is right or it's wrong. We're not here for that argument. We're not here to pick a side, because honestly, I don't have the answer. I don't know. I know there are a lot of things on the positive side that could have great impact, that could support growth, and could support, actually, from an administrative perspective, could support tremendous growth in the partnership space, because you will have much more time to devote to relationship building, to those leadership competencies that we keep talking about, versus the tasks and the things on your checklist that you're constantly being bogged down by. That's a really positive influence. But there are some negative things about AI. There's risk involved with it. There are questionable practices around how the data that informs artificial intelligence has been curated. There's potential bias that comes into play with artificial intelligence, and not even potential, there is known bias. There's documented known biases that exist inside of AI platforms right now. So you need to, as an individual, take a look at all of that information and make decisions that's best for you, that's best for your organization. Sometimes you don't even have access to AI inside of your organization. There are a lot of organizations that have locked it down because of the risk involved. So I would love to ask you, Rachel, we talked a little bit about that risk. Are there some things that come to mind for you that admins can do to address that potential risk? Is that something that admins could be exploring?
I think the answer is, and always should be, yes. I know in our past IAAP's passed, we've offered training on cybersecurity. We've offered training on these different, especially technology related platforms or topics or things like that, that may appear to be, and I'm air quoting for my podcast listeners, appear to be outside of the scope of the administrative profession. But honestly, part of being an administrative professional, and I'm speaking to you all like you don't know this and you do, but it really is, I like to equate administrative professionals to the tendons of the office. You all connect departments together, you connect work together, you know things in the office that nobody else does. And it's so second nature that it doesn't always feel like it's a big deal. And it is. And so I think to answer your question, yes, I think the research is really important. I think you as a user connecting to IT and really working in tandem together to look and say AI creates, again, not right or wrong, but AI creates efficiencies for organizations and workers, creates time, creates capacity in different ways. So there are definitely, and I think it probably is leaning more by industry as far as which organizations are locking down and are like, no AI, no open AI. Some of them are going more internal with AI and things like that. But I think you as a user are essential to the IT department's work and their research, because you can really speak to the user perspective and say, this is really how this can benefit this department, this work, my executive's work, whoever that might be, that you offer a different perspective that other departments and organizations don't have.
Agree. I also think you have some influence. You can absolutely be sharing resources that you found from other admins and other organizations. I think this community is stellar at sharing learning, sharing development with one another from a peer-to-peer perspective. Ask the question. You mentioned research, and I really want to dig in to research because this is one of those areas that I think we're going to talk about in multiple episodes, which is, what is research? What does it look like? What are ways that you can be accessing your own information? And I love that IAAP is a valuable resource for admins. We have a lot of credible, stellar content. Yes, Rachel and I are very biased about that, but I know we have affirmation. We have external affirmation that is true, that a lot of our content, all of our content is phenomenal content, and it is highly credible, excellent source of information, but it's only one body of knowledge. It's only one source of information. And yes, we are pulling information from different credible sources. We have lots of different facilitators. We work with lots of stakeholders. So it is a very credible space to find resource information, connect to other peers. It's one way to conduct research, is using the IAAP network, using the IAAP community, but it is only one source, one avenue. There are a lot of other avenues. Clearly, the top avenue for most folks is Google. We all know how to do a Google search. And Google is constantly updating and changing their algorithms, which is a source of frustration for a lot of people, and I understand it. Constantly having to navigate and maneuver like how search results are curated. You cannot assume that every single link you get is going to be to a credible source. You've got to do a little bit of critical thinking as you review what Google is producing for you. There's a lot of sponsored content, so people are paying for their content to show up in your feed. All of those things are true, and it is still a source of information that I think everyone should be accessing and using. And can you brush up on your knowledge about how Google works, how you're using search terms? For a very long time, that was a big cornerstone of tech training, was how are we using the internet? How are we using access to information? How do we curate search terms that are going to, how do we use search terms to curate really rich content, credible sources? And we've gotten away from that because it's become second nature to us that we have access. We have our phone is in our hands at all times. It is accessible to us where we can pop in and search for anything we want on the internet. And Google isn't the only, obviously, search engine. So any search engine, you have access to information, but how are we sourcing? What filters are we using to find credible information, accessible, credible information? Have you brushed up on those skills? Have you looked at how Google works these days? There's lots of information out there that is free where you can brush up on even just Google searches. So that's another resource that I think is potentially, we take it for granted because it's always there. We use it day in and day out I think we use it, and maybe this is just a generational or personal thing, but I think we use it for silly day-to-day things so frequently that we forget that it's actually a credible place to find information. That's not like, how old was this actor that I just watched in the movie, or what is actually in this dog food, like
Show me a recipe for these things. Yeah.
I'm searching for a recipe. We use it in our day-to-day lives. I think we take for granted that we can actually also use it in the workplace as a place to source information about training and things that we're looking for. And I know people use it, so I'm not saying that we're not using it, but it's a reminder. It's a good reminder that doing a Google search is a legitimate part of research. We can do that. You can find sources. You need to be thoughtful. You're going to be less discerning if you're searching the age of an actor versus something for your workplace that you're searching on behalf of your leadership team or something that you're looking for to present to your technology or HR team. You should be more discerning about what information pops. The other source that I think is another really great resource that I don't think we are using to the fullest benefit is LinkedIn.
Yes, right? LinkedIn search, you can do searching for more than just people. And we use it for people like all the time.
Right. But think about how you use LinkedIn. Your feed is full of people who are constantly posting content, links to articles. I see all of the time people engaging on LinkedIn with, oh my gosh, this was such an excellent article. I didn't know that I needed to read this today. There are quite a few thought leaders out on LinkedIn. If you're not utilizing it to source thought leadership, it is a great place for it. I know it's still a social media.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are turned off to the experience on social media, but even if you were using it just to source as a resource for research, the search function in LinkedIn will pop up all different types of results. So it could be a person that you might need to follow because they are a thought leader we're speaking specifically about AI. Do some LinkedIn searches about AI, see who's talking about it, find leaders in the field who are working with it, working on it. If you're looking for policy recommendations, do a search in LinkedIn for that content and you will get different types of posts. You will find articles, you will find people who are thought leaders in that sphere, in that space. Follow them and you'll continue to receive that type of content. So another, I think, resource, and specifically bringing it back to AI, another really great place to do some research on your own and find out what other people are doing. Find out what admins are saying about AI. How are they using it? Are there any admins on your feed or admin advocates on your feed who are talking about AI? Follow them. They might post sources to things that they've already done the credible research on Google and found the sources for you. That might be a really great way to do that. I think at the base of this part of the dialogue, research, taking it upon yourself to do your own research versus it's a little bit more active than the passive give me training. Where can I find someone who's going to train me to do this? Start asking some of those thought-provoking questions of yourself. How would you even know what you need to be trained on? Do you know where your company is headed? Do you know what your company's stance is on artificial intelligence? Are they in the process of building their own internal AI? Can you influence that? Can you do research with your peer group to find out what other people have learned? What lessons have they learned? What roadblocks, barriers have existed? How can you be the change agent for yourself?
Right. And I don't think we can overstress the critical thinking piece enough. I know we've talked about it a little bit, and I think it's really important that we talk about it a little bit more in what critical thinking is, because it can sometimes feel like cynicism, like nothing's ever good enough. There's this bar that nothing ever gets met. That's not what we're saying. Critical thinking is asking the questions and not taking anything as just assuming it to be fact or assuming it to be truth. I was thinking about when you were talking about searching for Googling in our everyday day. And it's 100% true. Sometimes when it's a silly thing that I'm Googling, I don't look to see if it's super I look a little bit because I don't want to open something and get a virus,
Right.
but it is very easy to fall into that as almost a habit. And so you have to really stop yourself. And if that means going more credible, even on the day-to-day things that you're asking, it's probably a good idea for all of us to kind of lean into that. But it really plays into the critical thinking space. And it is. I'm so glad you said that about passive, because I was thinking the same thing. Like, it is an active leaning in to the search for information. It is an active leaning in to making your own decisions using the facts and the data, the anecdotal data, the background of whatever source you want to look at, whatever that is appropriate for you, really looking at that carefully. And I think the flip side of that too is ensuring that your own biases are not getting in the way, because we all have them, right? We've talked about that on the first episode. We'll talk about it more. We are biased inherently. And so making sure that we are aware of our biases and doing whatever we can to mitigate those when we are searching, so that those are not feeding in to create even more biased, credible sources. I'm going to air quote too much, y'all. Leaning in to create those more biased sources, I think, is another really important piece of critical thinking we don't always think about. We can always search for something that supports what we think, right? Always, no matter what, you will find lots and lots of sources that affirm what we think. And don't forget to find things that contradict what you think, that may offer a different perspective, and lean in and say, that's interesting. I need to learn more about that. And maybe it even more affirms what you think, but at least you've done the critical thought and the research to have even more support.
Agree. And I think the peer community comes into play in that scenario as well, because I do believe finding people who work in different industries, who have a different experience, who have a different background from you, they are going to give you a richer perspective before you go off and make a choice or a decision or a recommendation, or you create influence on your workplace. And that is really a testament to why diversity is important and why it produces better outcomes, because it does lead to critical thought. It leads you down paths that you probably wouldn't even know existed, because we are not only inherently biased, but we are designed to find spaces where we are comfortable. We are designed to find people who are like us. That feels good. It feeds something very natural to human nature. And so it can feel conflicting to seek out difference, to seek out something that isn't comfortable, to seek out the uncomfortable spaces. And it is so incredibly rewarding once you experience how much richer the conversation is, how much deeper and more thought-provoking those challenges can be. It is a testament to diversity. And that's actually why the bias that exists inside of AI right now exists.
Right.
There's not as many voices, not as many experiences. It's not a diverse input to AI, which has created bias. I don't think it's a secret. If you've been on any social media platform, you have an algorithm. Your content is 100% tailored to your likes.
Yeah.
It is
Curated for you.
learning and understanding what content drives you to stay on it. What are you liking? What are you sharing? It is gathering that data constantly, and it's going to show you the things that it knows you're going to engage with or interact with. It's one of my, I wouldn't say favorite, it's not one of my favorite things to do, but something about this feeds my competitive nature. But I like to try and trip up the algorithms on my social media platforms by searching for things that, like, you would never think
Totally off
that I would be interested in this. Or if I see content on someone else's feed that I know would never show up on mine, I'm like, send that to me. I'm gonna engage with them. I'm gonna interact with that. And I find myself saying, oh, you don't know me. You'll never know me. Grim is not going to know me.
A glimpse into our CEO, ladies and gentlemen.
And yet, I still have a social media feed that's filled with baby goats in pajamas and kittens and puppies and all of the things that make me smile, and funny content, and all of my tricks have really been to no avail, because I still engage with content that I enjoy. So there's even a piece of recognition and awareness around that, which plays into the research, plays into how we feel about AI. And if you think about the connection, that algorithm on social media is an AI
Oh,
source.
yeah.
That algorithm is utilizing artificial intelligence to curate content for you. So thinking about how that bias exists just inherently because it's showing you content that it knows you're going to be comfortable with, you're going to enjoy, you're going to engage with, you're going to like. That's a big part of unpacking how we even approach artificial intelligence, how we approach any new big opportunity, change, technology adoption. I think the administrative profession is phenomenal at adapting.
Yes.
Everyone has had to adapt in the workplace. Admins generally have had to do it first.
Yes.
And or they're on the front edge of those changes. It usually impacts the profession. First, we're having to learn it, we're having to teach it, we're having to understand how it's going to impact business. That is not ever going to go away. And I actually think that's a great thing. But rather than reacting and adapting, what if we were actually the change agent? We were actually the ones saying, I see down the road, this is going to have a change. Let me be proactive and do some research and get ahead of it and see how we can influence and impact the organization, the mission, whatever it is that whatever journey you are on personally for your company.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really the other piece of this that I think is really important, because I don't know about you, like once it opened, there was like a whole new world. We'll share this as a resource, but there's literally a website that says there's an AI for that. And it is so overwhelmingly full of tools and AI. And this is not an endorsement. This is not an advocacy. It's just exists. And I learned about it. And it's so easy to shiny thing the new stuff, especially technology. You're like, oh, that sounds amazing. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that. And then you get overwhelmed and you don't try anything. And then it just shuts down. So I think if you are to the place for AI, if I can offer maybe a tip for the community, is if you are at a place where AI is a possibility, or your organization is looking at it, or you are tasked with looking at it for your department, whatever that looks like, I think it's really important to sit down and find where your challenges are, where your pain points are, where you're like, I'm spending a ton of time doing this task that is routine, that is a regular report, or whatever it might be. That's really the front work, instead of just diving in and being like, oh, yes, everybody, like really sitting down and saying, where can I use more time? Where can I use more time in my day? Where can I use more brain space in something, because I'm putting a ton of thought and brain space in this area. And once you have that structure put together, then I think you can start to look for actual guide tools and resources that help address that. And I think the possibility of adoption is much higher at that point, because it's addressing an issue and it's like a one at a time thing. So what I want to make sure everybody hears, and I think you would agree with me, Mel, we're not saying dive into the deep end of the pool. You may not know how to swim, just dive. You'll be fine. You'll figure it out. There is a thoughtfulness to this, and don't leave the pool. Stay in the pool, lay on the side until you're ready to jump in. Just don't leave the grounds, because we need to all learn how to swim at some point.
Agree. And I think you mentioned the website resource. There is an AI for that.com is that website. And we are not endorsing this website. We learned about it in a conference that was dedicated to artificial intelligence. And it has an overwhelmingly large amount of resources on that website. And there really literally is an AI for pretty much anything that you could think of. And they're not all good.
No.
They do not all produce good outcomes. They do not all produce accurate information. So I think that is also a really important aspect of when you're thinking about your list, when you're thinking about the places where you need support. You also need to take some ownership and responsibility over the outcomes and the outputs that AI provides, because it isn't always accurate. If you have seen the images that AI has produced, some of them are comical. Some of them, hands are a big issue for AI. If you haven't heard of or seen the phenomenon, do a search and look for all of the fun AI AI image outputs that include human hands because they're pretty funny.
You're welcome, everybody.
You're welcome. Might be a rabbit hole for you, so carve out a little time to do that. And I think the other thing that I wanted to be sure our audience knows about, specifically about the AI platforms that I think are going to support our workforce, the administrative profession, prompting is going to be, learning how to create prompts that will generate better output that are accurate, outputs that align to what you're asking. The prompts are really important. It's going to be an important thing to learn. So if you are brand new to AI, number one, I encourage everyone who has the ability and has access to just go play around with ChatGPT. It's an open source AI. Don't put anything out there that you feel strongly about or you don't want anyone to have access to, but you can play around, do something silly, write a job description for fake admin at fake organization, find something that is very low risk, go out there and put a prompt in there and play around with it just so you know what it is. When someone says ChatGPT or says, have you used an AI, a document production AI or that type of AI resource, there are plenty of open source. I would say, don't be afraid to go out there and play around just so you understand how it works. And then secondly, when you're really serious about using for support, make your list and learn how to prompt. Find training, find resources on the best way to prompt AI. And very much like Google, it is constantly going to change and evolve. Every single AI platform is going to evolve how it utilizes prompts, what types of prompting are going to produce different outcomes and outputs. So you're going to have to stay on top of that learning and constantly be updating. It's another commitment to lifelong learning, but you're constantly going to need to update those files, and your files being the ones in your mind.
We all have mental files, right?
Yeah, we all have a filing system, right?
Yes, that is so true. Because there are ways that you can, even if AI is not something that your organization is willing to lean into. I know a ton of people who AI in their home life, like they're using it to write recipes or write travel itineraries for their family vacation or whatever that looks like. We talked about this when we were talking about this episode, but they have chatbots out there that you can create that if your organization is okay with it. Let's be honest, y'all. Admins are the central keeper of all knowledge. You just almost everything. And it just happens very organically. And so I guarantee you are bombarded multiple times a day by people asking the same question or a similar question over and over again. Can you create a chatbot that is you, that your internal team can go in and ask those questions and then they get the answer? They learn how to change the toner. They do whatever that looks like. That is the thing that you feel like you're saying over and over and over again. There's so many opportunities to use this at home, at work, that we're not necessarily advocating you go out and do all of the things, but I'm so glad you said that, Mel, because it's so true. Like lean into it in some way for an awareness, because just because your organization isn't doing it today doesn't mean they aren't doing it tomorrow, or doesn't mean that you are going to be part of your organization for the next 10 years. Like things change. We're talking about change agents, like change is a reality. And so being aware and knowledgeable so that if you do end up in a new place or a new opportunity tomorrow, you're prepared and ready, and it's not quite a cold water in the face type situation.
Absolutely. It makes you more marketable, period. So it may not be a situation where you have intention of leaving your org, but what if a job opportunity is presented to you and AI is central to that, or they at least want you to have a baseline knowledge? It makes you more marketable. It also can build confidence. And that's really that piece of self-confidence is why we are pushing for you to do your own research, to not sit passively in a training. Training is a very valid, valuable source of
Let's
information.
say that again.
Come to training and build your own knowledge pool.
Yes.
Because I guarantee you, if you've done some research, you've done some playing around on different AI platforms, if you come to our training, you're going to get so much more out of that training. Your entry point isn't when you step foot into that training session. You will still find value in that, but creating a bigger, wider perspective allows you to show up as more of an agent of change versus someone who's reacting and responding and trying to adapt to the things that are coming your way.
Yes,
So
absolutely. Those of you who know me know I say it all the time, but you all are the collective wisdom in the room. And so whether it's you, your organization, whoever, like you have the knowledge. And so the more knowledge you can curate for yourself, the more you can impact those around you, your organization, your community, whatever that looks like.
Yes, love it. Embrace it. Become an agent of change. We're inviting you to, if you can't do it in your workplace right now, come be an agent of change in IAAP. We welcome questions. We welcome the critical thought. We will support you on that journey as best we can. The peer community is here to support you. Let's do it.
I was going to do a little shout out actually earlier when you were talking about searching and researching and sourcing. Social Link for all of our IAAP members, you have access to our internal network called Social Link, and it is a perfect place to go out and say, hey, I've got this question about AI. You will get a ton of responses, reactions, some conversation going. So don't forget that is an amazing resource too. And if you're not an IAAP member yet, join us. We'd love to have you be part of that community. It's like a custom curated content. Ooh, the 3 C's. That was accidental. This was so much fun. Thank you. I think this is a really important topic. And I know we offered a couple of resources, not many. Maybe we can add some in the show notes, but that really, you said it so beautifully. That wasn't the purpose. It really is about resetting mindset around new and different. And let's be honest, sometimes scary, and being equipped and prepared to lean into those spaces.
Agree. I think we are past the point of this is a new emerging topic. I think we have all recognized and realized this is here. We have to understand it. We need to know how to respond to it. And I think we can very easily lean into okay, give me how to do that. Let's get into the nuts and bolts. Let's start executing on it. And what we're really asking you to do is to examine how you are approaching that from a mindset perspective. Yes, those things are going to be important. You're going to need to learn how to execute. You're going to need to learn how to prompt, how to use these sources, what the risks and policies are. But before you get into the lane of execution, examine your mindset, your paradigm. How are you showing up for this tremendous change that could be impacting how everyone conducts business for the future? We invite you to start unpacking that part of artificial intelligence and the impacts that technology has on the workplace.
Absolutely. Such a great episode. Thank you.
Yes,
We'll see you all
that's
on the
a
next
wrap.
one.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beyond the Desk Admin Advocates. We hope you enjoyed diving deep into the world of admins with us.
Remember, this podcast isn't just about listening, it's about taking action. Whether it's advocating for yourself in the workplace or supporting your fellow admins, let's continue to elevate this profession together. If you have any thoughts, questions, or topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes, don't hesitate to reach out to us on social media or through our website.
Until next time, keep pushing beyond the desk. And remember, change begins with you. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.